Hello, and welcome to the Encourager Podcast, where we have encouraging conversations to help you joyfully harmonize your home and work life. I'm your host, Rebecca Scott. I'm a wife, mother, designer, coach, and author. I'm here to help encourage and empower you to confidently make decisions that work for you and your stage of life, whatever that might be. Are you ready to take your life to the next, more organized level? Are you tired of feeling overwhelmed and overstressed over all the roles you have? The Encourager Academy can help you take back the joy in these roles and help you harmonize both home and work life. The Encourager Academy online courses and coaching programs are designed to help you overcome your biggest obstacles in getting it all done by helping you navigate 5 systems: me, food, family, work, and home. Whether you're looking to improve your food system, grow your career, or strengthen your relationships with your family, we have the tools and resources you need to succeed within our academy. I will guide you through each system with guided worksheets, lifetime access to rewatch the videos, and the encouragement you need to fulfill your roles. And with our flexible online platform, you can learn at your own pace on your own schedule. Here are just a few of the benefits of joining the Encourager Academy: lifetime access to rewatch the videos and the guided worksheets, proven strategies and techniques for overcoming overwhelm and general fatigue with all your roles, practical tools and resources for improving all your systems no matter how much or how complicated, and flexibility to learn and grow on your own schedule from anywhere. So why wait? Join the Encourager Academy today and start harmonizing both work and home life. Use the code WeGotThis to get $50 off. Visit our website at theencourageracademy.com to learn more and enroll. Hello, Encouragers. On this week's podcast, I've got a guest that I've gotten to know over the past couple of months that I think you're going to find very encouraging, and that will help us as we roll into a new year. Even if we're 3 months in, even if they're 4 months in, we're still reflecting a little bit on well, what do we want 2024 to look like? And one of the goals that I've been writing down for, I think over a year is I want to know more about money. And so first of all, I just wrote it down. And then I was like, well, how do I circle this? So I started listening to some podcasts about money. Then I started reading some books about money. And I think the audience knows, but I'll remind you guys, I follow Every Dollar Dave Ramsey's plan, but we farm. So it has to be kind of a hybrid version of it because we farm. And my guest here knows all about coaching people in farming scenarios as well. But it's really helped, even just writing down that I wanted to learn more about money also brings up opportunities when I'm reading the Bible and when I'm reading anything where I'm like, oh, wait, that says something about money. So without further ado, we'll welcome our guest, Scott. Welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, I forgot to say, Scott is a husband, he's a dad, he's a coach, he's a co-founder, and he's also an author. So speaking about learning about money, we'll definitely talk about that at the end here too. And he's really, really, really involved with nonprofits and different boards, which is also just a big heartbeat for us here at The Encourager. We love featuring nonprofits and talking about what they're doing. So I got to book a call with Scott to kind of talk through a little bit about what that call in particular was about investing. And I will tell the listeners this right away before we start some interview things is it was so simple because sometimes money is super intimidating. And I'm sure you get this from your people you coach, right? And it's I don't even know where to start. But the way that you approached it with me was very simple and educational. You asked the questions. I just walked away with a ton of notes and how I can get involved with you. So thank you for meeting with me for that. And I didn't feel afraid to ask the dumb questions because there's that fear as well. No matter how old you are, you're like, is that a dumb question? And so I'd love for you to just give us just a brief overview of when you field these calls, what are some okay questions that we can ask that you're you guys, everybody asks that.
Yeah, the truth is, like you said, money and time, and those are really the two areas I work, and they blend together a lot because a lot of the things that way we handle money and the way we handle time, there's a lot of similarities. So when you think about money, it is actually simple. Unfortunately, it's not easy. And those aren't the same thing in that, we all know the simple things, right? Live on less than you make, do something smart with the difference. Yeah, that's easy to say, and it's simple, and it's cool, and it's right. Unfortunately, how do you actually do that? And I don't work in the area of like, okay, you should invest $568 in this particular mutual fund for 8.7 years and you'll have this much. That's a financial advisor. I'm a coach. So where I work and where I focus most of my attention is on the mindset and the belief, the heart and the mind, right? What do we think and what do we do? And then the accountability of actually following through. So it's all well and good to go to somebody who tells you invest this and this and you'll get this. And then you go home and go, yeah, but how do I can't find that in I don't know where that is. I couldn't find that much money I can't do it. And so I work on that gap of actually executing. And as far as the questions that people ask, honestly, it's cliche to say it. Any question's a good question. The question not asked is the only stupid question or bad question. Because a lot of it's not something that we're taught. It's not something that we talk about. It's kind of hidden information because think about it. You're at work. You don't ask people, what do they make? You don't ask people how much debt they have. Those are not polite conversations. We don't talk about the real ramifications of the day-to-day effect that money has on our life. So any of those questions are fair. I have everyone from asking me, hey, what is a 401k? Why do they even call it a 401? Why is it numbers in a letter? And by the way, the reason is that's the paragraph and line number in a tax code somewhere. It's, 401k. It's subsection K of section 401. That's really is. It's the rules. That's where they're written down. It's not because it's anything fancy, but we run into these barriers where we don't know what something is. We don't know how to do it. We don't know the implications of it. And therefore we stall out and don't actually execute.
Yeah. So you help, I love how you said it, you help stand in the gap of that. Like you have an Edward Jones person or whatever, or pick any one of them, but they're like, I don't actually know what it's doing. I mean, I get the mail, I get the emails, but I don't actually know. So you help with the coaching of what's happening and guide them to maybe more of their goals with their money?
Right.
Okay.
And even what questions to ask that, you've got an expert that's working in that area. Again, a lot of times we go into them and they're very educated. They use big words, not because they're being mean. And it's just, that's the language that they speak in. They're immersed in that stuff up to their eyeballs. And I don't know about you, but most of us, whenever somebody's doing that, we don't want to ask anything because it'll make us look stupid.
Yeah.
And so you don't ask those questions. And I'll actually give my clients and go, okay, let's come up. What are all the questions you want to ask? Write them down. Here's the ones I can answer. Here's the ones you need to ask your Edward Jones guy or your, New York Life guy or even if you're doing it yourself. So a lot of it is partnering to even think about what are the questions you need answered. Some of them I can answer or I can educate or I can give you resources. Other ones, it's like, no, you need to ask the guy that, or the gal that. Go sit down with them in an office and here's the question. Write it down. Go do it. And then you come back and it's like, well, did you ask him the question? And honestly, just that fact that I'm going to go, did you ask you that?
Yes. Oh, for
now
sure.
All of a sudden it's like, I got to ask the question because Scott's going to ask me,
Yeah. I always feel that too when I'm coaching. I'm like, feel free to throw me under the bus, everybody, but I will be following up. Like, I love to be, obviously the encouraging, the accountability partner of like, this is something that you want to happen. So let's take the initial steps to make it happen. Okay, you told me in our pre-interview chat here that you have a framework, and my listeners and I know oh boy, we love practical things that we can apply immediately after listening to something because we have too many things going on for us to be like, I'll do that later. So tell us a little bit about what is your 4-part framework that you use in your book that we'll also put in the show notes here, everybody, called Inspired Living to help people find their calling and how that relates to the money side of things.
Sure. So, I actually have about 4 different frameworks that I share in the book at different levels because, I always think of frameworks as almost those Russian dolls, right? You have a framework and then inside that you nest another framework and then inside that you nest another framework. And there's, it's frameworks all the way down, it's kind of because I'm a big believer in that idea of building systems and processes and frameworks to think about our life as opposed to kind of constantly reinventing the wheel. Because I think a lot of times that's what happens to us is we just kind of struggle going through life. Everything's a new problem. Everything's a new solution. I have to reinvent it from scratch. And yet the truth is a lot of times you don't. And so specifically when it comes to calling or passion or whatever, I use the word calling. I know most of your listeners that are probably familiar with that word have heard it before. And the reason I use it is it's different than a career or vocation. It's not about what you do. That's a career. Actually, it's more like a vocation, because vocation, vocal, comes from the word, same root word as calling, comes from, vocalization. So it's something that it almost feels like it's coming from outside of you. That I always describe it as, these are the things that when I think about doing them, my skin itches, which is a weird way of describing it, but you know what I mean? You get that feeling of, how I'm supposed to be doing that. I don't really want to do it, but I'm supposed to be doing it. Let me figure out how to do it. Right. I'm uncomfortable with it. So what I look at is kind of an idea of building yourself up. And here's the thing. A lot of us want to jump all the way to, what do we do? What should my calling look like in terms of what do I do? And what I encourage people in the framework is to go back to the beginning. And the actual beginning is about you. Who are you? So I call that investing in yourself. Yes, it means self-development, but it also means self-reflection. It means doing that deep work of digging in and going, what are the things that I've loved? What are the things that I've hated? What are the things that come so easy to me that when people ask me for help, I'm like, why do you ask for help with that? Everybody knows how to do that. Secret, not everybody knows how to do it. But those things, what do you do? And then also to look forward and dream a little bit and think about, what do I want the future to look like? What is my best life? What does that look like for me? How's it different from today? And that's deep and hard work. It's getting in touch with our why, our passions, our emotions. And it's a lot easier to focus on the what, how do I do it? What do I do
100%.
it? And again, we'll get there, but that's not where you start. So I call that investing in yourself. Kind of the next level up is invest in others. So notice, by the way, these are in order on purpose. You actually got to invest in yourself before you can invest in others, because the key to that is, if you don't fill your own cup and do some of your own work on yourself, it's really hard to then turn around and pour out into others, because you have nothing to pour. You haven't built yourself up yet. It's not about being selfish. It's about figuring it out and doing that work. And then immediately you begin to look for opportunities to pour out into others, to invest in others. This can be as simple as, I'm a half a step ahead of you. Come along on this journey with me. I don't have to be a mile and a half ahead of you. I can just be a little bit. Or, it may be as simple as, I've kind of got this idea. I think it's something that it's a problem and people need help with that problem. I can provide a solution. Let me go test that and see whether people are actually interested in that solution. By the way, that's all a business is a way of providing a solution for someone else's problem at some level. Even if that problem is, I want to look good or whatever. It does, the problem can be deep or superficial, doesn't matter. It's a solution for a problem. So you begin to invest in others. The next level is developing your influence. And it kind of comes out of that level of investing in others, because what you'll discover is, as you begin to mentor others, as you begin to provide those solutions, as you begin to encourage others, as you begin to reach out to others, naturally people begin to look to you as part of the solution. It's ironic, but in some ways, if you can describe someone else's problem to them, they immediately assume you have the solution. Now, by the way, the hard work is you actually have to deliver a solution, but they just resonate with it because they connect to you. Think about it. You've all done this. Everybody that's listening, you can think about a situation where somebody has been talking to you and you're like, have you been hanging out in my kitchen reading my mail? Because that's my life. And you immediately are attracted to that person because you figure they must know something about what's going on in my life. They must be able to help me in some way. And so that's developing influence. And then the last level is impact the world. And I want to be clear here. When I say impact the world, I don't necessarily mean go build a business that has 10 million followers and makes, $1 bazillion. I mean impacting other people in a way that is significant and in alignment with what you're called to do, because that feeds back into investing in yourself and feeding that energy of you, which then drives that whole engine from the bottom all the way up to the top.
There's so much to take away from this. And I was praying as you were talking there, because I thought, oh my gosh, this resonates on so many levels. I love that you gave permission that we don't have to reinvent the wheel to do this line of thinking. It's not like we're all of a sudden going to pick up, we could, but we don't have to pick up some kind of skill that we're absolutely completely unfamiliar with, because God has stored these in us with different experiences and different relationships in our life, that when you get still enough to think like you said, what do I love? What do I not love? What do I do that people are like, how did you do that? And you can't explain it. You're like,
Right.
I don't know. I just put these two things together and
it's
then it looked
easy.
good.
What do you mean?
Right?
Why are you asking me to explain this? Everybody knows how to do this.
I love that you don't have to start from scratch to find, if you drop the button, you're calling. It's more of an peeling away of the onion, if you will, to keep discovering like, what is God calling you to? And then I also like the permission that when you say impact the world, some people think, well, I got to solve a third world problem. Nope. It could be your neighbor. It could be, right. And I love this expression. I've said it several times. It's like Jesus made a huge impact, right? But if you actually look at the radius of what he worked in, it's not that far, right? But now obviously he has this huge impact. And he talked a lot about your neighbor in the Bible. And so that's been really just something to reflect on in the last year for me, is like, he said a lot about your neighbor. So I love that.
Yeah, I think it's roughly about a 40-mile radius that all of Jesus's ministry took place within.
Wow.
Which realize, think about that. Go 40 miles. I live in South Texas. 40 miles, that's like just up the road. That's not very far at all. So, yeah.
Yes. Oh, okay. Well, thank you for explaining a little bit of the framework. And like you said, we'll put things in the show notes so you can get access to Scott's book. And I got a treat for you at the end here too. But you said you'll go into that framework and then it goes a layer deeper and a layer deeper. And I think understanding the word calling, which you obviously did here briefly on the podcast, and I'm sure you describe in the book, is important, because that's that inner pull that does feel it's uncomfortable, or might even feel a little bit awkward. It's like, I call it the compulsion. Like you can't not do it. Like you just can't ignore it. And so I love that you narrowed it down for us like that. So if we're looking into our calling and we're discovering for ourselves and we're discovering for others, and we're thinking about like even getting down to like the impact that we want to make, how do we transition from a job that is not aligning? We don't even have to hate it, but it's just not quite aligning to this new calling that we know we need to step into.
And by the way, thanks for calling that out. It doesn't even have to be leaving something you hate. I've actually transitioned multiple times, and every time I've actually transitioned from something I love to something I love more.
Okay,
which is I left teaching. I love teaching. I loved everything about it. I went into the corporate world. I moved up rapidly, became a leader, in a company and executive, flying all over. I loved it, but there was still more to it. And then I transitioned to my own business around coaching. And again, even there, I'm not sure I'm at the end yet. There's probably more to come. I'm writing a book. That's a new piece. I've never done that before. I've done more speaking in the last few years. That's a new piece. I've done it before, but not as much. And so obviously it's still that. And that's one of the most important things, is realize all of this is about a journey, not a destination. It's about, like you use, the uncovering the layers of the onion, or polishing the stone, whatever analogy you want to use. It's not ever really done. You're always adding another piece. You're always adding another thing. And so if you're in one of those situations where, and this is honestly where a lot of my folks find themselves, where you've got that day job or you've got that other thing going on, and it seems to be it takes up all your time, and then you've got the other 742 things that are on your list, because we all have it. Or you find yourself sitting there and going, I really want to do this thing, but I don't know how to get there because I don't have enough time. I don't have enough money. That's usually the areas that people feel stuck in. So there are practical tips and techniques, and using a budget and live on less than you make, these sorts of things. And I do those. I help people with those and implementing those. But I also want to encourage people to realize that it's not about finding the app that'll fix your time, or finding the app that'll fix your money, or finding the one perfect budget and this is it. Because our life isn't a photograph, it's a film strip. So even if you found the app that works today, give it 6 months or a year, probably not working perfect anymore, because your life changes. And so instead, it's about recognizing that it's about what we do in here. It's really all about talent, is the lane I call it. I say I work with people in time, talent, and treasures. I really trick you, because all I really work on is talent. the time and the treasures comes along for the ride, because that's really it. When you look in the mirror, you're both the problem, but you're also the solution. And so what it is stepping back and going, okay, I've done some thinking. I know where I want to go. I know it feels like this is the right direction. It feels like this is where my passion lies. What do I have to get out of the way so that I can begin to pursue that? What do I have to say no to temporarily, may not be forever, but at least right now in this season, so that I can open up time for something else? Or so that I could free up money for something else. And it may be, we've been living in debt up to our eyeballs, and we need to actually buckle down and live on less than we make and pay off this debt so that we can free up this extra money that currently is going to debt payments and then use that to start our business. By the way, that may take 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. When I say temporary, could be 2 months, could be 5 years. It depends on your situation and how deeply you've created it. When it comes to time, what are the things that you've said yes to? And they may even be good things. They may even be nice things, but you need to say no to them temporarily for a season so that you can free up that time to open up and spend some time and some energy on doing the deep work and uncovering your passion, and then actually beginning to transition to it. And then recognize that transition arc is going to take time. I started my business in 2011. I went full time in 2017. This is 6 years. And those 6 years, I was working a high-end corporate job, 60 to 80 hours a week, flying all over the country. I still had a son. I still had a wife. I still had church activities. I still had other things I did. But I also pruned back and said, these are the core things. This is the box of things that are most important to me. I'm still going to spend time with my wife. Still going to spend time with my son. I'm still going to do a certain amount at church. But I didn't serve on 3 nonprofit boards at that point because that's important to me. Wasn't the most important thing. Now that I've transitioned, I serve on multiple boards, because I've freed up time to do those things because it was important and I wanted to bring it back. And that's one of the encouraging things I want to say, because a lot of times when we start saying no to things, we feel like it's no forever. And sometimes it is no forever, but a lot of times it's not. A lot of times it's just a temporary no.
Hey, encouragers, are you tired of feeling overwhelmed by information overload? Do you crave clarity and purposeful progress? Less of a fire hose and more of a slow drip? Let me introduce you to the Clarity Blueprint membership community. It's a place where women just like you gather to transform their lives from chaos to clarity. We take purposeful steps each month so you can see results and not get overwhelmed. Imagine this, twice a month, you'll join a supportive group of like-minded women on a journey to make progress in smaller, more edible bites than another huge commitment of time or energy. Our sessions are designed to help you cut through the noise, set meaningful goals, and take actionable steps toward progress. Think of it like your podcast listening with additional support. You'll get access to our monthly calls, worksheets, videos, guest speakers, resources, and a fun community that's cheering you on every step of the way. Say goodbye to overwhelm and hello to purposeful progress immediately. We promise to keep it simple yet impactful and very affordable. Visit theencouragerpodcast.com, click on the tab Clarity Blueprint, and become a member today. You can join at any point, and we can't wait to see who's going to walk along this journey with us. You didn't even know this, but in the podcast briefly before this, one of the things that's been preached to me since I was little is it's a journey, not a destination, Becca. Fine. And it's so true. But I like your phrase of that it's a film strip, not a photograph. And I'm like, ooh, that is so much better, only because I've had to hear the other one for so long. And I think you're right. Like, we keep thinking that I'm going to say no to everything for my new goal, my new habit, my new calling. And it doesn't always work that definitive. Sometimes it is a no for a season. I said no to youth group. I'd done youth group for 16 years, church camp and youth group. And I said no for 10 years as I waited to grow all of my littles and then have entered back in. So while it was a hard no for me, that might not be everybody's length of time or that strict of to me, that was a strict no because it was something that I loved. but I'm back in that season. And so rather than getting overwhelmed by, like you said, the calling being like, okay, I'm abandoning everything, I'm saying no to it may not look like that. It may look more like a transition into it. And then as you say no to certain things and say yes to certain things, I can't help but think, and I'm sure you know this from coaching examples, is that it's actually not the calling that they started out pursuing. It may transition in the middle.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
A lot of times.
Can you give us some of those examples, Scott? I'm putting you on the spot, but
so it's interesting. You know, I've had folks that at first they thought that they were going to start a particular business providing a software solution. You know, that was what the picture they had in their head is. They had this great idea for a software, and if they could just create this software, that everyone out there was going to use it. And as they got into it and began to figure it out and began to put it together, they began to notice that, you know, there's like all these if-thens, you know, in the software. We're like, if this, then we go this way, and if that, and, you know what? I can't really build a one tool that actually solves this problem for everybody. And I don't want to go too much into the problem because honestly, you'll recognize the you some of your listeners will probably actually know the product that. So instead, they begin to create kind of this multi-dimensional, you know, product. And so that's a simple example of somebody that took a single idea and split it off into others. Let me give you a more extreme example. Still uses software, not because I only work with software people. It just happens to fall into this. I know a gentleman that ran a plumbing franchise. He was the number one franchise in the United States for multiple years for this particular franchise company. He was making, you know, revenue, 10 million, 18 million, 20 million and up. You know, it's huge business, right? Employed about 200 different plumbers, all of that. And as he got into it, he noticed that there was a problem and what he started figuring out is that all these other franchise owners were coming to him wanting to figure out how was he doing his business. So not how are you going and fixing the pipes, but how are you doing the business side of the plumbing business? And so he began to teach people kind of what he was doing behind the scenes that was different, that was allowing him to succeed. And they would go off and they would begin to succeed. And eventually he's like, you know what? I'm not really jazzed by fixing people's pipes. I'm jazzed by helping other people run plumbing businesses. You know, that's really where my passion lies. He got into plumbing because he was excited about being a business owner, not because he liked fixing pipes. You know, but he became a guy who fixed pipes, you know, and then grew that into a business. So he pivoted completely. He sold his plumbing business and became a consultant, coach, and actually built some software in this case too, because he figured out some places where there's some holes in the way that things like calls were scheduled and stuff, and all of the tools that were out there didn't work well. Well, he was building it from the inside out because he knew exactly what problem he needed to solve to help his business. So he went and built that tool. Well, now he sells that tool, and then he sells the how to use it, and he sells how to start the business, and he does all of this consulting, and he loves it. It's a much more in alignment with who he really was. But by the way, he never would have found that if he didn't start the plumbing business. So the plumbing business wasn't a mistake. You know?
Right. We joke about this frequently in my staff is that like all of our past experiences and all of our odd jobs are like, when am I ever going to use that? We do end up using them. Like we just like tap and we're like, well, that's why I was I worked the radio board in college for baseball games. And I have used that. I have used that knowledge. I'm like, I've been a janitor. I've used that several times in my motherhood. But like, there's never a wasted step, if you will, in the work arena, which also gives us space that there's never a misstep in your calling and pursuing that as well. Like it could change and it could magnify to something gargantuan, or it could magnify into exactly what he planned for your life. So permission for it to have, like you said, the impact around the world, or the impact in your neighborhood, or the impact personally that God has called you to. It'll range, and you get to discover that.
Right. And as an ex-science teacher, here's the framing that I use for people. Consider that you're just running experiments and you're just getting data. You know, it's information that you're gaining. It's not mistakes that you're making or successes that you're having. Either one, by the way, good or bad. It's information. It's data. It's you're running an experiment. You're testing something. I don't really enjoy this part of this. Okay, good. What can we do to outsource that or get rid of that or pivot away from that? Or, I really love this. This is really in alignment. Great. What can we do to magnify that or add to that or do more of that? It's just information. It's what you do with that information or how you respond to that, that data that you gather. That's the value. The information itself is neutral. It's not good or bad. How you respond to it is what creates the value, the good or the bad.
Oh, that's so true. It's like one of my favorite phrases now too is to say zoom out. Like zoom out, like you said, like let's look at the film strip and not just this photograph sitting in front of us. It's the same thing with the experiment. Like zoom out, stop putting emotion on that you didn't like this part or you're upset that the experiment didn't turn out how it was, which you could still have all those feelings, but zoom out and take a look at it objectively and go, ooh, but I could rev this part of it up because that part was fun.
Acknowledge the feeling. There's nothing wrong with feelings, and there's nothing wrong with, I got upset or I felt bad or I was angry or I was hurt. Acknowledge the feelings, but there's a difference between acknowledging them and that being the only thing that you take away from the experience. That's wallowing. I used to, when I worked in corporate, I used to explain to my direct reports that they could come in, they could talk about anything, they could vent, but they couldn't wallow. And I said, the difference is venting is if you just need to unload something, get it off your back and complain about it, you go through it one time. So wallowing is when you start repeating it. You're going through it the second time and the third time and the fifth time, and you're thinking about it the 17th time. And that's wallowing. That's a different thing. And we need to move past that.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Scott, as people complete this process of assembling this puzzle and this framework that you've been telling us about with their calling, what is the most important thing for them to remember?
Well, I kind of gave part of it away already with the film strip. It is really that. I mean, that I want to repeat that core idea of recognizing that your journey is always, where you are is where you are. And what you're doing is what you're doing. But that doesn't mean it has to be that way forever. Because we have a tendency to take anything, good or bad. When we're on the top of the mountain, we want to take a picture of the mountain. We want to put up the tabernacles and live there forever. It's like, this is it. I'm on the top of the mountain and here's where I want to stay. Guess what? You're not going to stay there. It's going to change. By the same token, when you're in the deepest, darkest valley and those, the mountains are casting shadows on you that you feel like, I'm never going to see the light of day again, it's also not permanent. You're also just there for now. It's a season. And so it is sort of that recognizing that your life is made up of hills and valleys, but it's also made up of all those times in between. And it's all of that is of value. All of that is good. God has created good in all segments of our life. Because a lot of times we think of the mountaintop is good and the valley is bad. No, they're just experiences. They're just points in time. And by the way, let me testify to this. That I have suffered from clinical depression. I have fought that for decades. I have been suicidal in my past. I've had periods of darkness in my life that, really brought me to the edge. So the truth is, I get it whenever it's like you're in that dark spot and it feels like this is forever. This is all parts of my life. Everything is falling apart. It's all over. What I can tell you from the other side is, no, it's not. That's a lie. The truth is you can keep moving forward and come out of it, even at the darkest moment. And by the same token, recognize that moment of the peak is also temporary, and that's okay. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that, because that makes a big difference too, because it's easy to listen to someone who would only coach on like the high moments and here's where we're going to get, but doesn't have the background of like, but there will be some valleys
There's going to be valleys.
It's like that's the only honest thing to do is like, yeah, there's going to be some valleys in there.
Real quick, let me give you a practical tip just because I can reach. So I literally And you'll notice how hard it is for me to grab this. This is my happy file.
Okay.
So what I've done is over the years, I've collected notes from clients, from students, from coworkers. There's Christmas cards. There's just any note that I looked at and found encouraging for me. I collect them. Some of them are hanging on the wall. Those I'm not going to grab. Some of them are in this bag. And why do I have them? Because when I'm in that valley point, sometimes I reach over and grab that bag and just start reading some notes. It's just like, oh yeah, my life isn't, as bad as I thought it was. This was that moment. Oh, look, here's a Christmas card from a client, or here's a thing from a former student, or here's when I was in a newspaper article that was good. Whatever, it just any encouraging moment that you can find. Don't leave those behind. Print them out, capture them, keep them.
Absolutely.
And then use them in those moments when you're in that dark spot, because we all need that encouragement then.
My staff and I kind of call it rocket fuel. Like just that little testimony, or just that card, like you said, just a card. I have a folder and it's titled family, but maybe I should retitle it encouragement, because it's the same thing that you have. Just a reflection to like go back in the film strip and find out where there was some encouraging ways, even though it felt really, really dark. I love looking at the dates of things and going, I missed it then. Like I knew to save it, but if you would have asked me how that year was, I would have said that was a bad year. And then I have like several different cards from that year that speak a different story. So it's kind of like just that reflecting. Well, thank you, guys. That's an encouragement right there. That's the practical thing you can do immediately after listening to this is one, make a little happy sack. You guys couldn't see it, but it's this really thick sack because everybody adores Scott of all these cards and everything that he has saved. And then also just I encourage you to zoom out, look at the framework. But if you want a little bit more detail on the framework, do get Scott's book. And then you mentioned a little treat for us. What is that, Scott?
Yeah, actually, I put together a resource page, some tips, some things. If those are areas that time, talent, and treasures are areas where you've struggled with in the past, or figuring out your calling is something you've struggled with in the past, if you go over to inspiredstewardship.com/encourage for the encouragers, if you go over to inspiredstewardship.com/encourage, it's got some free resources for you. If you want to jump on a call and have a quick chat, I've got a link there where you can set that up. It's got information about the book and other things that you might want to check out. Again, I really encourage you, if this is an area that you're struggling with, at least go over there and download the free tips, because it's 5 quick, easy tips on time, 5 quick, easy tips on talent, and 5 quick, easy tips on treasures. And you can do one of them, you can do all 3 of them. It doesn't matter. And that from that, you'll actually get a chance to hopefully jumpstart and get started down that road. And, again, check out the book. That really lays out the whole framework and kind of goes into each of those components in a lot more detail than we were able to today.
So if you find yourself reflecting on the question, like, what is my calling? It can feel a little bit weighty. Scott's approach to it is very practical. So just kind of taking these resources that he's given us, our own link. I love that. Or asking, like, is this all there is? Is this what it is? That can sound depressing, but it doesn't have to be. It just means that there's maybe a tug on your heart. And that would be part of the calling, that God just wants you to go one step deeper. And here's a really just easy resource to kind of take a peek at it. And it might just be making an impact in your neighborhood. It might be in your own family, and it might be around the world. But who are we to deny that those questions shouldn't have some answers that we should start pursuing? So that's what I would encourage our encouragers here. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Scott. We super appreciate it. We'll put all of his information in our show notes for you. And until next time, encourager, we got this because he's got us. Thanks so much for tuning in. If the Encourager podcast has helped or encouraged you in any way, please subscribe to the show and leave a 5-star review. And then help us spread the message of encouragement and hope by sharing the podcast with others. Until next time, encouragers, we got this.